morning. This is something a little new and different for us. I know that some of you have been in this room before with us looking at interesting marketing-oriented content, but today we're doing it in collaboration with with some friends from McKinsey, and I'll introduce them in just a second. First, I'll just fly through some logistics for the day. But we think this is a new and interesting and exciting collaboration for us to try to bring you guys some really powerful and useful third-party information, and not just our own view on succeeding in a digital world moving forward. And we're also going to be very interested to hear your feedback on how this works. Some of you actually are going to probably spend some time with our partners from McKinsey a little later today, and some time with us talking about specific business challenges that you're facing. So we're looking forward to the entirety of the day in that regard. A couple of administrative details or things you need to know. If you don't know already, restrooms are right outside the door here. We are actually recording this today, and so if you want to go back and review something that you saw or heard here today, you'll have the ability to do that on a YouTube channel that we've set up. It's youtube.com/marketingclinic. We post videos from other events like this on that channel, and we've also placed other, we think, marketing insight type videos on that YouTube channel. So we hope you'll go back and look at things you've seen here, or also point it out to folks in the office. We're going to have lunch when we conclude in this room. That's 2 floors up. You have to go with one of us, okay? So if you're sticking around for lunch, make sure you buddy up with someone from Google, because security's tight, and you won't make it if you don't go with one of us. So make sure you buddy up with one of us. I have prizes today. I have a couple of prizes to give away. So you have to be here to win, and it may serve you well to pay attention to what we're showing to you in order to qualify yourself to win a prize. And so I'll probably give away one of those as we go through the morning. Agenda's right behind me. You see that we're going to take a break after a couple of presentations at about 10:45 before we go into one last brief presentation, and then what I know is going to be a really, really interesting fireside chat and conversation. I hope you'll be interactive with us. We think we've got some interesting, thought-provoking content here today, and the hope is that one of you will break the ice sooner than later as the slides go up, and then that gets the rest of the conversation going. I'm going to hand the mic over now to Warren Teichner, who is our partner in creating this event today, to say a couple of words, and then we'll get the show going.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian. Just wanted to welcome everyone, at least from the McKinsey side. I'm Warren Teichner. I'm a partner with McKinsey and one of our leaders of our consumer health service line. I think we're very excited to be here today, and really appreciate the partnership with Google. This is a vertical which I think we as a McKinsey think is an incredibly exciting place, and one where we have a lot of interest and we focus a lot on. And so just really looking forward to a good discussion today. I'm going to hand over to Rebecca Millman, who's one of our leaders in our digital practice and leads our focus in this. And she's going to take you through this morning the first presentation on the consumer decision journey.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So, as Warren said, I'm one of the co-leaders of our digital practice, McKinsey Digital. I have a long history with the firm. I actually was a generalist at the firm for many years before I left, and was away from the firm for close to a decade. I went to Digitas first in the strategy and analytics group. I served clients across sectors in auto, in travel, in telco, in tech, in both B2C and B2B. Then I was a sole practitioner serving Fortune 50 companies as a single practitioner consultant in the digital space. And then I went back to the firm about 4 years ago to help build the practice at the firm. They convinced me to come back. And in doing that, I do 2 things at the firm. I both serve clients directly, and then I help us think about our capability set, kind of the frameworks and philosophies and ways that we serve clients, how we staff and think about our own people and the skill sets that we need as a firm in order to serve all of you well, and then how we push our own cutting edge capabilities. And we've evolved our thinking too, and I help us build partnerships with other organizations like Google, Facebook, Twitter, some of the providers who build capability sets independently, like attribution providers, analytics providers, DMPs, DSPs, et cetera, in that space, so that we come to our clients with the best capability set that we can bring to bear, whether we build it or not. So that's kind of who I am. What I'm doing today is, I hope we're going to present some provocative frameworks that help us put together a conversation around what's top of mind for you guys. Again, to spark a conversation, not to finish a conversation, but to start a conversation about what you guys have to solve for in your daily lives. What's disrupting your daily lives in your businesses around digital, and what maybe some of the solution set looks like. Gives you something to start a conversation around the solution set. I would love it if you interrupt me and we start to have a conversation rather than being on the slides. We can stay on the slides if you want to, but it's more fun to have a conversation. And the first framework we're going to talk about in this piece of it is the consumer decision journey, which we find it looks sort of surprisingly simple when we throw it up, but it's surprisingly powerful when you start to put it into practice. And then later on today, we'll talk about more of a capabilities framework. We can ignore this. So you guys probably know this better than anyone. In consumer health, we used to have a pretty arm's length engagement. A little while ago, we had the doctor who had a sort of limited doctor or health professional. This could be a coach, this could be a dietitian, depending on where you're at, who had conferences, journals, forums by which they got information about solutions. We had a consumer or patient who had some offline stuff going on. We had a company that provided solutions, and we had some interactions that looked very real world and simple in an offline world. I won't spend too much time here. Then digital came along and made this picture a lot more complicated and introduced a lot of new communications. And these offer two things. They offered disruptions and they offered opportunities. And just to focus on a couple of them, they started to offer new interactions between these different kinds of players. So for example, doctors and health training professionals started to have peer-to-peer platforms. Doctors have Sermo, training professionals have platforms, and there started to be an ecosystem of third-party information providers in the professional space. Here in consumers, we started having WebMD and other digital social communities coming in and actually providing information externally to consumers, and also facilitating consumer-to-consumer interaction. And then we actually had now a much more robust ability between these two, right? We also have connected health starting to come in here, and actually new disruptive business models coming in and fundamentally changing the ability. I would put this a lot in the opportunity space, but also the disruptor space. You guys know this better than anyone. And we have the ability to actually enable this relationship between the company and the training professional who you might be selling to, depending on what your business model is, to actually amplify this relationship here and allow your field sales force potentially to focus on highest potential professionals here while actually scaling relationships here. Any comments, questions, thoughts on this? You guys are living this, right? As we start to think about then, how do we take advantage of this, right? This can feel very overwhelming, this new world. So in this new world and this dynamic that's taking place with disruption and opportunity, this can be taking place across your entire business system. You might have an external player coming in and disrupting you while you're trying to fight for your operating business over on this side. You might have new places where you need to spend, so you have channel proliferation on your marketing side, and you've got a ton going on. How do you make sense of it and prioritize? And this is where we say, look, fundamentally, you need to know where your consumer is making decisions. And this is where the consumer decision journey framework becomes a useful tool. And we look at, from start to finish, where is fundamentally our target audience coming into the decision journey? What's triggering their entry into the cognitive process that's going to take them into our window and move them through from the fundamental evaluation of the product that they might buy through into their purchase, and then importantly into experiencing and using the product again. Because as we all know, with a consumer health product, it's not just about the first use, but it's about repeated decision and repeated use. Because we'll go through an example in a minute, but once that first use takes place, that decision takes place over and over again. For example, if it's a nutrition product, once I decide to use it, I need to decide to use it again. If it's a vision care product, if it's a contact lens, if I put that in my eye, I need to decide to put it in my eye again the next day. If it's even if it's an OTC product, I need to decide to take that medication again, especially if there's a side effect. And different pieces are important around this decision journey. I'm going to walk you through an example, a diet and nutrition example. So what do we mean when we say trigger? This is the entry into the health condition or need. The kinds of things we're talking about are, for example, an external trigger. Here in this diet or nutrition journey, it could be that I've got a BMI read, I've got a cardiac risk factor, doctor has come in and said, there's something about your health, or I'm experiencing chronic pain or discomfort. And the initial options are these things. This is where my branding has been important, or my past experience. This is the initial options that are top of mind for me based on what I've already known. Then when I start to do research, I, the consumer, start to do research, the evaluation or influencing opportunities, when I start to go into search, or I start to go into my research piece, I will actually drop and add options based on what I see. And what we find when we do this consumer journey research is that where the old marketing funnel used to tell us that this is a condensing of options and the set actually gets narrower, we know statistically across all categories, including consumer health, that consumers actually expand their option set here. This is a critical moment, and we know that where many companies actually put a lot of their money and marketing into the initial options, into branding money, into mass media, into trying to get awareness here, we actually know that money spent here is very, very effective. Getting into opening up the consideration set once the trigger has been made and someone has signaled to you that they're in active evaluation and that they've put themselves into what we call they've told you that they're in that window, the buy window. The kinds of things you can see here, the kinds of things that are useful here. What's critical when we move into first use, again, here we have the actual decision to purchase. We're making the actual selection. What's useful here? Here we're looking at actual specifications. The kinds of things that matter are we actually seeing the value proposition of the specific solution? Things like what are the product specifications? What are the selection options? What are the financing, if financing is at play here? And then when we get to the experience, then it's all about what does it feel like when I've taken this solution. I'm gonna move forward. Any questions? When we think through the journey, the pain points along the different aspects of the journey, as you can imagine, are going to be different. We've talked through a little bit of this. At the trigger moment, we're going to have different resistance points. Early on with the triggers, we could have a resistant patient, right? So let's say I'm experiencing the signs of health issues or a diagnostic issue. Let's say I am experiencing symptoms, but I'm resisting. I don't actually want to be aware of or address some of the signs. What can a consumer health company do? Things like a self-check or diagnostic tutorial. If I'm concerned with, if I have a bias to it, if in the consideration set, I have a bias to known solutions. So I'm actually thinking about a solution. So for example, I have a diet issue. I want to lose weight, but my bias is to actually go to a known solution like, let's say, a diet bar, a meal supplement replacement. And that's my bias, because that's a solution that I know. So I go on a search. I go onto Google, for example, and I go to a search term and I say diet bars. But coaching is a solution. I'm a company that offers diet coaching, and I want to actually inject my solution in. I want to open up the consideration set. I want to expand the target's solution set and inject my solution. What do? I can actually target that user, knowing that that's a substitution moment for me. I can buy that competitive search term and inject myself into that competitive set. I can open their solution set in a very targeted way. I know they're in market for the solution, so I'm not overspending branding money. In other words, I'm not throwing out scattered money, media money. They've triggered to me that they're in market for a diet solution. I know that they have a bias towards a competitive solution that I don't want them to buy, and I'm retargeting them to a new solution. What do I have to deliver? I actually have to deliver them excellent content and excellent experience when they land that tells them why there's a good value proposition around the coaching, which gets me into here, the buy solution that says there's a solution-based program for them that meets their need. And by the way, there's financial assistance because that coaching solution is a lot more expensive than a bar, right? So I actually message them all the way through this new solution. Does that make sense? And then, by the way, once they show up for their first coaching appointment, it has to be an excellent experience when they show up. And then I have to target them after they experience it and enjoy it for second use, this critical second use moment. I have to make sure that I am coming back to them, retargeting them, and closing in the sale and replenishment moment for them, which I can do through eCRM, electronically delivered CRM, and excellent use of data. I'm going to pause. This may seem very, give me some feedback, guys. Is this stuff you all know? I see some nods. All right, because we can accelerate. Is this a framework you're all familiar with already? I see nods. Good. So then, a couple facts. The digital decision journey, by the way, is not just impacting digital results, right? What we do online impacts offline. We already talked about the number of brands in the valuation set goes up. Mobile price checking is actually going up from 2010 to 2013. Mobile price checking taking place in the real world, actually going up from 13 to 50%. Retail sales, offline retail sales being influenced by online, going up 44 to 53%. Major brands now on Twitter with Twitter handles going up with multiple Twitter handles. This just says multi-channel is here and it's real. And some more statistics around mobile being critically important, right? So just some examples for you of around the consumer decision journey where mobile is playing a role. One thing to point out that I think you might want to be, just in terms of here, that 25% of loyalty program signups are coming from mobile phones. Very interesting. So the next thing I had planned to do was to talk a little bit about the some examples of some innovative things folks are doing around the decision journey. But before I do that, given that you guys, it sounds like you guys are familiar with the consumer decision journey and the framework, I'm going to, given that we sped through that and have some time, what I would rather do is sort of throw the question back out to you and say, and I'm going to look for a brave soul here, where on the consumer decision journey are you guys experiencing issues? What are your challenges around the consumer decision journey? And maybe even before that, I'd ask for a show of hands and say, how many of you guys feel like you have a good, solid understanding of insights around your critical digital decision journey? Like who in this room feels like they can say, I understand my consumer's behavior around the digital decision journey today, right now? No brave soul. Right. Excellent. Tell us about it.
Well, no, I'd like to just.
Can you say who you are?
I'm Ken Harris, CEO of Swenson Health Products.
Excellent.
And we have primarily a demographic that's in their 50s. But our mobile business is moving at a very rapid rate in terms of the number of visitors to our website this year has tripled coming in on mobile, and our sales have also tripled. And what we're trying to wrestle with is how to get those mobile conversion rates start to go up towards what we're getting on the desktop. But more importantly, what is the interaction between starting that journey on mobile and then completing that journey? The recent statistics I looked at absolutely floored me. I would have assumed that more than 50% of my mobile users have been using mobile to open the email and then start their evaluation journey. That's only 23%. 55% are coming direct on organic through mobile. And I'm trying to understand what all this means, and then more importantly, what is the relationship and the assist factor between mobile and the desktop as you're planning your marketing strategy?
So let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked before. Do you understand where mobile fits in your consumer decision journey?
Absolutely do not. And that's one of the things I'm trying to understand. And I know it's in a very embryonic stage.
Yeah.
But I know if I don't get on the train, I'm going to be in a lot of crap a year from now.
Yeah. So you're a brave man. Thank you for speaking up. But this is a great example. You have some great analytics around mobile performance and traditional web performance, right? You have an analytics team that's giving you doing some analytics, that has some analytics programs in place, and they're giving you reports, right? And what the reports are not giving you is actually a longitudinal sense of the meaning of the analytics, right? And so they're not essentially hanging those analytics on a business trajectory for you that gives you an outcome that is related to a sales conversion, right? And that, as you try to make sense of those analytics, is not helping you then make a business decision based on it, right? So the challenge for you is how do I retool my reporting to help me make sense of this? That's one sort of tactical challenge. But the way to come back to that, right? Let's set that aside for a second. That's a tactical challenge around the analytics and reporting. A way to get around that very quickly is to say, look, there's some quick and dirty research focus group, follow somebody around, literally, that says, when someone's going through this process and they're on a mobile, what do they do? Literally, what do they do? The person who is picking this up, starting a process on the mobile, why are they doing it, and what do they want from that? That's what you need to know. That's the insight you need to have. And if they're falling off of that mobile and not converting in the way, why? And what can you do to address that? And it may well be that it's okay that they're falling off, because they may grab it on the go, see what they want to see about your product, and say, good, I saw what I want to see. When I get home, I'm jumping on traditional web to close it. That's okay. That could be okay. Or it could be devastating, right? Could be terrifying. Could be that they're jumping on it and getting lost because it's underperforming. Right now, you don't know. And that's a risk for you, right? So I think there's some research to do, some understanding to get, to understand, is that great, fine, good use of mobile because they're getting triggered and they're going to go close later? Or is it terrifying because you're losing them? That's an important question.
The other important point is how much money do I want to spend in the various channels?
I think you need to know first, know the answer first. Possibly. Yep. I don't think you can answer that till you know the journey.
No.
That would, right. Yeah. Thank you. Very brave man. Question comes back. Who else knows their journey? Does anyone feel like they know their journey well? They can say, and by the way, who thinks there's one journey? Who thinks there's 5 journeys? 10 journeys? 10? More than 20 journeys in their customer base. More than 30 journeys. That wasn't Misi. Shout out. How many segments do you, somebody be brave. How many customer segments do you think? How many journeys do you think you need in your customer base? You need to understand digital journeys.
Well, for us, I mean, the way we look at it is...
Can you say who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Paige, and I work at Apis Health, which has 3 brands. North American Spine, Migraine Treatment Centers of America, and we're launching a gynecological surgery brand right now. And, oh, thank you. And the way we look at it is we don't really say that we have 5 segments. We look at it as we have demographic segments, then we have condition-specific segments, and then we have, just segments that way. Like it kind of builds from there. So, for example, with North American Spine, which does minimally invasive spine surgery, we probably have, and I would look to my colleague here, probably about 15 different major conditions that would lead to spine surgery at some point. But that is going to be completely different from the demographic segments that we have. So, so that's how we're looking at it. So when you do that cross-section, you're probably looking at maybe 40 different segments just for that one brand. I think, so that's something that we're working through right now. We're trying to figure out what those demographic segments look like. But beyond that, also trying to understand the journey and how things are changing. So, for example,
we're trying to figure out exactly when you talk about, like, say, DRTV, how much of that is still TV and how much of that is really turned into DR? For example, so is TV taking on a different role than it used to, specifically in the healthcare space when you're looking at this journey? And so those are some of the major questions that we have and probably could be answered to some extent by your same answer that you gave, Swanson, which is, you really have to map out your own customer journey to figure that out.
And as you think about, I like how you characterized your segments, right? So as you think about both the condition-specific journeys and the channel-specific journeys, how are you targeting those? And I'm using you as a little bit of a fishbowl for the rest of the audience. So thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
How do you, as you think about actually marketing to those segments and maybe the cross-section of the channel and the disease state, talk a little bit about how you think about targeting them. How do you actually put marketing against them?
Well, to date, I would say that we've been focusing more on the condition and, well, no, I guess we don't know.
What advice would you guys in the audience offer to these guys? Think about what they're doing. So they have conditions and channels.
Well, I guess, what we've been doing, and, we're really open to answers, but what we've been doing is mapping out. So understanding that people are looking for the condition and trying to understand what that condition is first, and then getting the diagnosis, then getting advice on getting surgery, looking for other options, et cetera. And then we're trying to hit them at each of those points to help them, but clearly could probably do it better.
Don't forget there are prizes. You in the back. Mr. Swanson.
Well, I got the same issue. I've got conditions that I'm marketing vitamins and supplements too. So the critical thing to me was to understand the demographic of which conditions affect which demographic or which gender. And what we found is the younger demographic is more interested in prevention. The older demographic is more interested in quality of life, easing pain. So for instance, I'd be selling glucosamine to older people concerned about their joints. I'd be selling antioxidants to younger people who are concerned about preventing the onset of cancer. So that is the first segmentation that I normally do in terms of dealing with condition specific.
Yes.
Was that what you want to talk about? It wasn't just how many seconds, it was honestly exponential. It increases exponentially. So we can talk about the condition.
Can you state who you are?
My name is Paul Geller. I'm the CEO of National Metrics.
Great.
We represent some health brands that are here today. Anyway, yeah, there we go. But there's this entire other aspect of the segmentation, right? Maybe it's a misnomer to call it segmentation, but what you're talking about are touch points in the life cycle. So not only do you have to think about the demographics, geographics, psychographics, but you also have to talk about how where they are in the life cycle of you talking to them. So on day one, they might search for you on mobile, then they might go and do research on the desktop, and then for lots of our clients, it requires a phone call to become a patient or a client or a customer. So those are just three. They may use your product and then decide they maybe become a referral, a way to get referrals, or they may want to use it again. So there already you've identified, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 different touch points that are occurring in that increases the potential segmentation exponentially already. So anyone that's thinking about it just like as if there were just one touch point, is missing opportunity after opportunity.
So our decision map, right? Thank you. Our decision map, when we start to talk about where to put a dollar, is which channel, right? We're used to thinking from traditional, we're used to thinking about what channel. Do we put it in TV? Do we put it in DRTV? Do we put it in mobile? To your point, do we put it in mobile? Do we put it in display? Do we put it in a disease state, a product in our portfolio? Do we put it in a segment? Where in the funnel do we put it? Do we put it in branding? Do we put it in here? Do we put it in here? Do we put it in here? Right? And by the way, in digital, do we put it in micro segments? Do we put it across tons of properties, meaning specific URLs, specific digital properties, et cetera, right? So suddenly this gets to be a very large, to your point, grid, right? A decision grid. And by the way, we'll talk about this when we talk about capabilities a little later this morning. The good news is this then becomes, we have a toolkit to help us start to deal with the amount of complexity that we have here. We have a big data and sort of technology toolkit that helps us start to deal with the amount of decisioning we have to do here, because it does get overwhelming very fast, right? But yes,
hey, Rebecca,
the level of complexity here is high.
Comment on the complexity.
Yeah.
So we did a study a year and a half ago in partnership with Compete, and some of you have seen the results of that study, I think. But we did it specifically around this journey, the online journey for a person who's selecting a hospital specifically. So it's not perfectly relevant to all of you, but it's health related. And we were able, Paul, your point about touch points, we were actually able to look at clickstream data. So it's digital touch points, but it's very real touch points along the way. And the survey was done over, I think maybe 25, 30,000 individuals, okay? And we were able to track them from the point at which they landed, or they did some sort of conversion activity on a hospital site back to their start point, their first search. And we were able to, and this is about the complexity and how you can either make yourself crazy or try to streamline or build around the biggest areas of opportunity. We actually identified 4,000 different paths, touch point paths, okay, among a not enormous amount of consumers or patients. We did find, however, that 60%, I think it was 60% of the folks could be organized into 20 of the paths, okay? So there are ways to, data to insight to action. There are ways to find certain efficiencies or certain critical mass within this very complex set of data points. And of course, we also were able to identify over how much time that took place and how many different digital platforms or devices were used to try to help provide advice on media, not just media investment. This is not just a media investment discussion. This is also a content development discussion, right? Because at the different points you're describing, different content is required. So we were able to talk to some hospital clients specifically about, how to take that enormous amount of confusing data, look for the areas of opportunity or critical mass, but then see what that means, not just for media investment, but also for content creation and content distribution. So really interesting data. Now, it's not really a commercial. You guys have a tool. We also have we have tools. Google Analytics. You guys can start to get to some of this stuff for yourselves right now, for free. Essentially, you can get to some of this stuff right now. It's not going to give you all of your answers, but it's a way to start to get deeper, more data, around which you can build insights and create some new action items around this very topic. But it exists. It's very daunting, I know. And we're about to launch with Compete to do this again around the very specific journey that someone takes with video on the web. Like, what is the actual impact of video on the web? So sorry about the interruption.
Yeah, that's actually, it's a nice segue into, we might actually want to move into your piece about moments that matter, just with a little bit of a segue, which is that this exercise of consumer decision journey mapping at this very detailed level, we call it, you can call it heat mapping, you can call it doing consumer decision journey mapping, but understanding what some limited number of journeys and touch points that are the ones that really impact the consumer is the work here. So using this framework to actually understand what the touch points and paths are that matter is the power of this framework. And determining what are the moments and paths that matter. You can do it with a tool, a data-driven tool. You can do it with a survey. You can do it in the quick and dirty